Really glad that you're with us this morning. I want to invite you, if you haven't already, go ahead and sign in on the Facebook Live so that we know that you're with us. And in that, you're offering your presence to the Lord and your community to us. And grateful for that. Over the past several weeks, as we've gone through this coronavirus crisis, one of the things that I've heard a lot about and see a lot about is the importance and the significance of leadership in this crisis. And leaders are being challenged and critiqued in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different areas of life. And if you read anything about the news, there are so many people that have risen up in this time of crisis, and people that have fallen down, that have dropped the ball, and governors are being critiqued, local community leaders are being critiqued, world leaders are being critiqued on the basis of their competency. Do they have the ability to lead, and do they have the knowledge that they need, or the people around them that they need to lead through a crisis? Do they have the confidence to lead? Can they stand up in this time of struggle and need and say, here I am, look at me, follow me, I'll show you the way? And do they have the character to lead? Are they people that if we follow them, we're going to end up where we want to be and the kind of person that we want to be? Now, leadership is really important. And that idea, the significance, the importance of leadership is compounded in a monarchy. Right? We live in a democracy, and there are a lot of different people, a lot of different voices that get to speak into our lives, and in different leaders in different realms. But in a monarchy, what the king says goes. And he has advisors and counselors that he can or cannot use, but ultimately the king says it, and that is the way it is. And so if you have a good king in a monarchy, then things are going to go well for you. But if you have a bad king in a monarchy, then things are not going to go well for you. As goes the king, so goes the kingdom. Now, we're going to be looking at a king of the nation of Israel this morning. And the criteria by which a king of Israel was measured was specifically by who that king worshipped. What God or God did the kings worship? And if the king worshipped the God of heaven and earth, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, things went well for the king and things went well for the people. But if the king started worshiping other gods, in the same way, things started going bad for the king and bad for the people. Israel had, at this point in time, we're going to meet a guy named King Ahab this morning. And when King Ahab comes on the scene, he was the seventh king over the course of 7 decades who was not a good king. So things had been going badly, and things were getting worse, because it says in his text that he was worse than all the kings that had gone before him. And the other unique thing about the kings of Israel, because they were monarchs, because they could do whatever they want, they didn't have anybody else who could challenge them, but that God raised up these people. They were called prophets. And the prophets were the conscience of the king. So King Ahab, the latest in a string of bad 7 generations, or 7 kings in a row, 70 years. It says in 1 Kings chapter 17, in the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, Ahab became king of Israel, and he reigned in Samaria over Israel 22 years. Ahab, son of Omri, did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of those who had come before him. Each one worse than the one before, Ahab so far the worst of all. And he married the original Jezebel, right? You've heard about, she's a Jezebel. This was like he married the one that all other Jezebels have been named after. And Jezebel worshipped other gods. Specifically, she worshipped the gods of Baal and of Asherah. And Ahab would follow his wife Jezebel in the worship of those other gods. And Baal was the god of fertility. And in Baal worship, they had temple prostitutes, and the people who worship Baal would go to the temple and engage with those prostitutes in all manner of debauchery. And the idea was, as a god of fertility, if you made the god happy, if you made Baal happy, you would coerce Baal then to bring fertility to the land, and it was kind of their own way of stimulating the economy. And so Jezebel worshipped Baal and also Asherah, and Asherah was a god of fertility and also a god of war. It was about profits, it was about power, it was about making things work in their own way by coercing the gods to go along with them. And Elijah was the prophet that we're going to talk about. He was King Ahab's own Jiminy Cricket. Ahab didn't have a conscience of his own, so Elijah comes along. He's raised up as leader of God to be his conscience. These are hard times for Ahab, hard times for Israel, and it's not a good time, not a good place to be a prophet when you have to speak, when you have to be the conscience of the king. We're going to look at Elijah's life in 3 acts. And in his opening act, he announces to Ahab and upon Israel a multi-year drought. As surely as God lives, Elijah says, the God of Israel before whom I stand in obedient service, the next years are going to see a total drought, not a drop of dew or rain, unless I say otherwise. Now, right now, we're experiencing an economic crisis. The economy has been shut down in a number of realms, but a lot of things are still going, and there's an anticipation that when the virus we have a vaccine, we have a treatment, we have herd immunity, that someday in some way things might look different, but things are gonna come back. So there's been we're in an economic crisis, but when you talk about no rain for a people who grew everything that they had, all the food that they ate came from the ground, all the water they came from the that they drank came from the water, right? There's no supply lines to get food and water from other places to bring in places to where there isn't any. We are talking about a complete and total economic shutdown. It's Act 1 of Elijah's prophecy. And so as Elijah makes this proclamation, God says to Elijah, get out of here and fast. Head east and head out at the Kerith Ravine on the other side of the Jordan River. Go to the Kerith Ravine, Elijah. Now, Kerith is a Hebrew word that means separation or cut off. And a cutting off that Elijah was being sent out in this time of drought to be completely separate. That is actually to save his life, right? To be completely separate then and cut off from everything else that existed. And it was a season in which Elijah would be challenged to put his complete confidence and trust. He would be totally dependent upon God for this season. It says Elijah went and camped in the Kerith Ravine on the other side of the Jordan. Ravens brought him meals, both breakfast and supper, and he drank from the brook. For this first part of the season, right, he's in the Kerith Ravine, cut off, shut off, cut down, and all he had was what the raven brought, and God provided for him food and drink every day. At the end of this season, then, Kerith, the brook would dry up. Elijah would go to another place. He would meet a widow who had a son. She had a small handful of flour, a small jug of oil, and they then would live off of that for the next several years. Some of us are in the Kerith Ravine right now. Right? We're in a place where we've been cut off, separated, shut off from the things that we rely upon, the things that we've been dependent upon, and they're simply gone. And we don't know what to do. And we don't know where to look, and we don't know how to proceed in the midst of this season. And it's in that time when there was nothing else that Elijah could look to that he learned to put his total confidence and trust in God. Right? Maybe it's your job. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's loved ones. Maybe it's your sense of significance that you get from, you value from the things that you do around. But many of them cut off in this place of complete dependence. The reality is it's always been true that we're always completely dependent upon God, but we're able in times of prosperity and able in times when things are going well to kind of prop ourselves up with things that we can accumulate ourselves and securities and comforts that we can buy with money. We have this idea that we work hard and we have these skills and we go out and do these things to provide for ourselves. Ultimately, all of those things can be taken away. Many of those things have been taken away. And we're reminded of how fragile things really are, how fragile our existence really are, and that we truly are completely dependent upon God. Elijah would go then from this season of complete dependence and trust and reliance upon God's provision. And he would come up out of this season. And the second act I call the real God showdown. Remember, as goes the king, so goes the kingdom. As goes the king's worship for the kings of Israel, so goes the king. So Elijah calls out the 450 prophets of Baal who ran the temple, the Baal's temples, who managed and all these the temple prostitutes who orchestrated this whole thing. And he calls out Ahab and he calls out the temple prostitutes and he said, I want you to meet me on Mount Carmel. Let the Baal prophets bring up, he says in 1 Kings chapter 18, let the Baal prophets bring up 2 oxen. Let them pick one, butcher it, and lay it on the altar on firewood, but don't ignite it. I'll take the other ox, cut it up, and lay it on the wood, but neither will I light the fire. Then you pray to your gods, and I'll pray to God. The God who answers with fire will prove to be, in fact, God. So we set up 2 altars. We have 2 sacrifices. You bring your prophets. We're going to put them out there. You pray, and the prophets of Baal go first. And this is a very humorous story because Elijah is an incredible trash talker, right? They go first and they start praying to the Baal gods and saying, send down fire, light the sacrifice, and nothing happens. And Elijah says, maybe he's sleeping. Maybe you need to wake him up. Shout louder. They shout louder. Nothing happens. Maybe he's traveling. Maybe you got to call him out of his travel. Maybe he's taking a nap. Maybe he's off relieving himself. Nothing happens. And then Elijah steps up to the plate, cries out to God. Fire falls from heaven. And the people declare, the Lord, He is God. Elijah orders the prophets of Baal to be killed. That Elijah had gone through this season in the Kerith ravine of complete and total reliance and trust upon God and experiencing God coming through for him over and over and over again. And from that posture then, from that place, steps into his calling as a prophet to confront Ahab, to confront the prophets of Baal. From a place of trust and dependence to a place of confidence and courage, he's raised up. It was, if you watched last week's message, it was his Esther hour. For such a time as this, God had prepared him for this. I've asked somebody from our Journey family to share a story this morning from their own life of kind of a movement from a Kerith ravine experience into a Mount Carmel moment. So I want you to hear this story and see this playing out in a real life. So introduce you to Kaylee, who's sharing to us from her home this morning.
Hi everybody, I miss you guys a lot. Can't wait to see you again in person. So I just wanted to share a quick story about my childhood and my life up until this point. So when I was younger, I got a hamster, and I was super excited because I really, really, really wanted this hamster. And my hamster came with a book on how to care for a hamster. And one of the things it said was to make sure you wash your hands before and after every single time you hold the hamster. So I did. I washed my hands before and after every single time I held the hamster, to the point where my hands turned super, super red. My mom thought I was definitely allergic to this hamster because my sister did, her hands did not turn super, super red. She also got a hamster. And that is really the first memory that I have of being obsessed with keeping my hands clean, with being afraid of germs. I really had no concept of what might happen to me or to my hamster if I didn't wash my hands before or after holding them. But that's the first memory that I have of really feeling the obsessive need to keep my hands clean. It's far from the last time that I would feel that. I would deal with that up until now. I still deal with it, the need to keep my hands clean, and to the point where I have often called my mom hysterical. What if I got this germ and then pass it on to somebody else? It's often illogical, irrational, and I usually know that it's both of those things. But it's still often an uncontrollable thought pattern for me. Up until the point after college, I went to a psychologist and got the official obsessive compulsive disorder diagnosis, OCD, as it's more popularly known. And over the years have just spent a lot of time trying to learn how to process and deal with things so that it's not so obsessive, so that I can function well, as normal as we get. And so let's fast forward a little bit towards this past year in March. I stepped into a new role, and my new role has largely has to do with the LA Marathon. And if you can remember back to March 8th of this year, I know it feels like a lifetime ago, but March 8th of this past year was the LA Marathon. Big part of my job is to facilitate a lot of the activities that surround the LA Marathon with my new job. And going into that weekend, this was when the coronavirus was things were getting canceled in other parts of the world. We weren't really sure the impact it was going to have on the United States yet. There was a lot of fear around what was going to happen, around the germs, around the anxiety was building. You could sense it. But we weren't sure what that was going to look like yet. And I couldn't figure out, I spent my whole life afraid of germs. Why am I not feeling the panic and the anxiety and the fear around these germs when there is a real threat that everyone else is feeling? I could tell people around me are feeling this fear, and it's just building and building and building. But for me, it wasn't, which is so weird because I'm normally the most afraid of germs of anyone that I know. And so coming into that weekend, I finally realized I don't feel panic. I feel peace. And the reason that I feel peace is because I've been being prepared. I've been being trained for this moment my whole entire life. It's how to process those thoughts is something that I've dealt with since I was a child. And so it's I realized God has prepared me for this moment of needing to be a leader amidst this season of the coronavirus. And that is why I didn't feel panic. And it's so crazy to look back and think all those years of what truly felt like mind torture is something that God was going to use later in my life in a way that I couldn't have seen coming. So I also, sometimes I get this feeling, it's called my Pez dispenser feeling, which I know sounds weird. Think of what a Pez dispenser is, right? It's those candy dispensers, and they have the little shape on top, usually it's a cartoon character, they flip open, the Pez are designed to fit right inside of the container. And it's a feeling that comes over me. It's it feels like time and space have been designed to fit just my body. And it's a physical feeling. I can actually feel it. What I've learned over the years is that is the Holy Spirit. It's the Holy Spirit saying this is where you're supposed to be right now. This is the time and space that you've been designed for. What I've learned over the years is kind of something that is new to me that I'm processing, is that when I step into that space of being designed for that moment, the space where God is working, where God is moving, it's impossible. You can't be in that space without being activated to whatever comes next. It's like in that moment, this is where you're supposed to be, but God's not done with that yet. So thanks for letting me share a little bit about my journey with germs, and I hope to see you all soon.
Thanks, Kaylee. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that with us. And I just, many of you have been in the Cure Through Ravine. You've been in that place of mind torture, of struggle. Some of you are just going into there now, and God is calling you to trust Him in completely different ways. But if you've been there and in that place, is this a time that God is calling you into that moment of saying, you have something to offer here uniquely because you have learned to walk with me. You have learned to trust with me. And I'm calling you out to lead at this time. So Act 1, the Cure Through Ravine, a time of separation, cutting off, learning to trust in God. Act 2, being called out then to walk in that confidence and that trust to accomplish God's purposes in this time and in this season that He's prepared you for. And Act 3 of Elijah's story, he, after Ahab goes home, having lost all of his prophets at Mount Carmel, he goes home and he reports to his wife Jezebel what's happened. And it's interesting what transpires next. This is from 1 Kings chapter 9. It says, Jezebel sent a messenger. After she finds out that all the prophets of Baal have been killed, she sends a messenger to Elijah and says, may the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life, Elijah, like that of one of them. Elijah, if you're not dead by this time tomorrow, may the gods deal with me ever so severely. And Elijah had a spiritual meltdown. He went from this economic shutdown and time of learning dependence to this time of this great showdown to a complete and total meltdown. Remember, he'd been fed by the ravens, breakfast and dinner every day. He ate along with a widow and her son from a small handful of flour and a jug of oil every day. And it kept replenishing itself so that they never ran out of food. He pantsed the prophets at Mount Carmel. And now he's running for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush and sat down under it and prayed that he might die. This is Elijah's prayer. I have had enough, Lord. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. God, I've had enough. Some of you are right there right now. I've had enough. Maybe you've had your Cure Through Ravine. Maybe you've had moments in time where you've stepped out and you've walked with God, but somehow this one's just knocked you off your horse. I've had enough. And I'm not enough. I'm not enough to deal with this situation. I'm not enough to figure this one out. To me, this might be the most surprising thing about this whole story. I mean, all the miracles that take place in Elijah's life are amazing things, but that he fell so quickly from all of that to this place of, God, just kill me. I want to be done with this whole thing so quickly. It's surprising, except that is where so many of us find ourselves. It says that he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, get up and eat. You're not you, Elijah, when you're hungry. You got to eat something. He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and he drank, and then he lay down again. First things first, Elijah. You need to eat and you need to rest. Elijah, you've been going too hard, too fast, too long. You need to eat and you need to rest. Sometimes the most spiritual activities that we can do in our lives are eat and rest. Or maybe in this situation, many of you have been eating and resting a whole lot, and maybe you need to do the opposite, right? Maybe you need to get up in the morning and get out and take a walk and maybe eat a little bit less. But the point is, take care of yourself physically in this moment. We are physical, spiritual, emotional beings. Elijah, take care of yourself, and he provides for that. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up, Elijah, and eat." So he got up and he ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. Now, Mount Horeb is a very important place in the history of Israel. It's the place where God had gathered Israel after he brought them out of bondage in Egypt. It's the place that they would wait while Moses went up on the mountain and got the Ten Commandments and brought them back down. It's the place that God would make his covenant with his people in that season. And so he sends Elijah back to this place where they have met with God. He actually says, "Elijah, it's time to worship. It's time for you to leave this place of exhaustion, come to me, spend time with me on the mountain." And God meets Elijah there. He meets him in worship. He meets him on the mountain. And then the word of the Lord came to Elijah. It says, "Elijah, what are you doing here?" Elijah responds, "I've been working my heart out for the God of angel armies. God, I've been busting it for you. And the people of Israel have abandoned your covenant." Now, that's true. He had been working hard for God. The people of Israel had abandoned their covenant, or had abandoned their covenant. He goes on to say, "They destroyed the places of worship," also true. "And they murdered the prophets," also true. And then he goes on to say, "And I'm the only one left. And now they're trying to kill me." You know, a lie that we believe to be true affects us as if it were true, whether it is true or not. If we believe something to be true, then we will live like that is true. We will act like that was true. We believe that we are alone in the world that's dissolved, then we will do everything that we can to make our life work because it's all up to us. If it's true or not, right? If we believe it to be true, even if it's a lie, we live like it's true. And Elijah has completely bought in to two lies. The first one, he says, "I am the only one left." He actually says this, I think, 3 times throughout this passage. "I'm the only one left, God. I'm the only one in the world still trying to do the right thing. I'm the only one who's still worshiping you. I'm the only one, God." And God says to Elijah, "You, Elijah, are not the last Mohican. I'm preserving for myself 7,000 souls, the knees that haven't bowed to the god Baal, the mouths that haven't kissed his image." Elijah, you think you're alone. Elijah, you're living like you're alone. Elijah, you're running like you're alone. Elijah, you're scared to death like you're alone. You're not alone. We have 7,000 other people on this journey walking the same path. You are not alone. His second lie that he's believing says, "And they're gonna kill me." They're gonna kill me. God says to Elijah, "Go back the way you came through the desert to Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael, make him king over Aram. Then anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, make him king over Israel. Finally anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel, Mahala, to succeed you as prophet. Anyone who escapes the death of Hazael will be killed by Jehu, and anyone who escapes the death of Jehu will be killed by Elisha. Now, I read these funny names, and you can kind of get lost in all of them. But the point that's being made here is God is saying to Elijah, bro, you are not alone. You're not the last one. There are others with you. And what you see here is you see people who are trying to kill you, and you believe that they're going to succeed, that they're going to get you, that they're going to kill you. Elijah, what he's saying, you're not done, so you don't die. And he gives him the orders to go back, and he says, you're a prophet. You've had your rest. You've had your food. You've had the time to sleep. We've met on the mountain. Now it's time for you to go back and do your thing. Prophets, prophesy. Go do your job again, Elijah. I'm in control. It's interesting in the story that Elijah's fear, I'm the only one left, you're not. He says, and I don't want to die. And Elijah is one of only two people in the biblical record who actually is not recorded as dying. Elijah in the story was escorted out of earth to heaven in a chariot of fire. Now, that doesn't happen for most of us. Most of us are going to have to face our fear of dying. But how many of our fears actually never come to fruition? How many of our fears, the things that consume us, the things that absorb us, the things that overwhelm us, never happen? God says to Elijah, you need to go back and do your job. Now, I wonder what your fears are and what lies might you be believing right now about your life, about your future, about the things that you're going to have to go through. Are they true or aren't they true? You watch the news every day. There are all kinds of people who have all kinds of opinions about how long this is going to last and how bad it's going to get and how long it's going to take. And there's 100 different ideas about what it's going to be like. And you start swimming in all that and you get lost. What's the truth? What do we know for sure? Elijah, God says, you are not alone. You're not alone. Elijah, you are not finished with your job yet. Go back and do what I called you and appointed you to do in this season. What's the truth? Paul would later say that we're called to take every thought captive to Christ, to immerse ourselves in the truth of God and the truth of His Spirit and the truth of His Word, to immerse ourselves ultimately. Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life, to immerse ourselves in Jesus, to walk in the truth and live by the truth. And Jesus says the truth will set you free. Where are you? Are you in the Kirith Ravine? Are you learning, needing to learn just to completely trust God with your life and your help and your hope and your strength? Are you being called out of that place to stand up and to lead and to help others in this season and to guide them to a place of life and help and hope and strength? Have you been running from all of this and scared to death? God says to Elijah, eat, rest, take care of yourself physically, worship me, and plant yourself in the truth and walk with me on this journey. Lord, I pray for people on their journeys this morning, wherever they are in their lives. There are some people that are in a place that they've never been before, where they're being required, even if they don't, to trust in you, to rely upon you in ways that they never have before. God, meet them in that place. Give them hope, give them strength, give them courage. Prepare them, even in this time of struggle, for the future that you have for them. Use this season in their life. And those who are sitting and have been prepared, Lord, that you've been working in their lives up to this point. Infuse them with the life of your Spirit and the courage to step out and to be all that you've called them to be and everything that you prepared for in this season. And for those who are running and scared, Lord, wake them up to your presence, to your power, to your purpose. Restore them. God, thank you that you are a God of every season and that you are with us in every stage of the journey. Encourage people's hearts this morning to continue theirs with you, through you, by you, for you. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.